Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Outcast Podcast. My name is River, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name's Hunter, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Luke, and my pronouns are he, him.
In today's episode, we'll be having a conversation about the act of coming out and the significance it has within our community. Before we get into our main topic, we're wanting to open up with some quotes about coming out. This is a quote from Anthony Van Brown from A Life of Unlearning, A Journey to Find the Truth. The messages I got were loud and clear. Never, ever admit to yourself or anyone who you are. Hide it, kill it, eradicate it, heal it, deliver it, break it, suppress it, deny it, marry it to a woman, heterosexualize it, therapy it, anything and everything. But whatever you do, don't stand up one day and say, I am gay, because that will mean the end. I spent most of my life trying to destroy the real me, doing all I could to ensure he never found expression. A suicide of the soul, identity, and meaning. When you finally embrace the gift of your sexual orientation, it is the end of shame, fear, and oppression. You leave the darkness of the closet and begin a life of honesty, authenticity, and freedom.
This quote is from Anthony Van Brown as well, A Life of Unlearning, a preacher's struggle with his homosexuality, church, and faith. The closet does have a benefit. It provides safety, which at times is important. But remember, as long as you are in there, two other things will be too: fear and shame.
For many people within the LGBTQ plus community, the single most powerful act they can partake in to gain autonomy, self-acceptance, and freedom in a world that too often denies them these qualities is to come out of the closet. This action alone can be the first stepping stone in making a scornful, bigoted, and unaccepting society come to terms with their humanity. The same holds true for families of LGBTQ plus individuals who are hateful and unaccepting. When a family member comes out of the closet, they are no longer an abstract threat to fear. Instead, they become tangible, real, forcing the family to either come to terms with their own bigotry and heal, or give in to that bigotry, thus destroying the trust of their queer loved one forever. Today, we're speaking with local author, LGBTQ plus counselor, and an all-around force for good in our community, Paige Hendricks, about her book, Out of the Closet, an anthology of coming out stories, and why it's important for queer youth to come out. Thank you so much for being with us today, Paige.
Happy to be here.
Before we get into the book, Out of the Closet, an anthology of coming out stories, can you explain to our listeners what an anthology is?
It's basically a collection of stories, in more particular short stories usually. But, we take them, a few smaller versions and put them all together into one book.
I was wondering if you wanted to share with the listeners what the process of coming out was like for you, and how long did it take you to come into your current identity?
I was in denial for a long time. About the time I started questioning myself and the time I started coming out was about 4 to 5 years. It was a lot of a lot of acquire and purge, a lot of heartache, a lot of secrecy. I didn't tell anybody what I was going through. And when I actually did come out in early 2018, time has just flown by. It was like brickload lifted off my shoulders. I felt so much better immediately.
And what led you to include that story along with those 37 other individuals?
Well, I figured I was asking so much of the people that was willing to contribute. And I thought it was only fair that I share my story as well. I wanted people to know, the whole purpose was I wanted people to know that they weren't alone. And just hopefully my story will help some people as well.
Do you feel like you had multiple coming out phases, or was it just like one big coming out?
I came out to my wife, my kids, my sisters, and those were all individual times. So, did have multiple coming out. And then there's the people at work who I came out first to my supervisors and manager. Then I started coming out to the people in my department, and then a few of the departments around that I work closely with. So, yeah, you could say I had about a dozen different coming outs.
Yeah, I feel like because you kind of have to, because there's something about coming out that changed your life in a way. So you kind of have to navigate it, certain things a certain way, like maybe wait to come out to people at work until this time, or maybe wait to come out to your family until this time, wait to come out to a partner until this time, and kind of like space things out depending on where you are in your life before you come out of the closet. Not even thinking about the fact that some people, like myself, like I had like 3 coming outs technically, because when I was 12, I came out to myself as bi, and then I came out again to myself when I was 13 as a gay man, and then when I was 20, I had a coming out to myself again as non-binary, and then again when I was 20, I had a 4th coming out to myself as a trans woman. So there was like multiple coming outs, like with identities, just because I was still trying to find the language that was perfect for me, sort of. So it was kind of like going in and out of closets, which I don't think is talked about enough, is that like sometimes we are in a closet, and then we come out of that closet, and then we go back into another one because that feels more comfortable, and then we have to come out of another one, and then maybe we go back into another closet, and then we come out of that one, and it's like sort of, it can be a sort of in and out sort of experience.
I think there is something to be said, like coming out as a young person, of like almost accidentally pushing yourself into a second closet, almost like not super knowing exactly what, like how you identify. I also came out at like 12. I came out as a young bi woman when I was like 12, and that like pushed me into a weird like second closet of like, okay, this is the identity I've done. Now I'm not allowed to come out again. And there's I think there's some like internalized stigma for sure about having to do that again with like gender identity, or realizing that maybe you've evolved and changed.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Like feeling like this is my identity. This is what I've created for myself. I'm not anything else. And then with time, you figure out like, oh, wait, it wasn't my identity. It just was like the closest thing to what I thought was my identity. I wanted to ask you, from your personal experience, Paige, what were the psychological and emotional consequences that you endured being in the closet?
Oh
Especially
gosh,
like
being in the closet, fearful, because I wasn't telling anybody. When I came out, I was like 2 months after getting married, and I was scared to death that my wife was going to think I didn't sign up for this, that she would be leaving me, that my kids would abandon me. You know, that everything I've known and loved is just going to push me aside because I am suddenly not what they had wanted me to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very, very scary, as opposed to actually coming out. It was, night and day.
Do you have like a moment of like, we always talk about the time when we come out to other people, but you remember, because I can remember this for myself, but do you remember that moment when you came out to yourself, like silently, and what that was like? Because I remember vividly.
Oh yeah. The time I finally accepted myself, I was just like, I was watching a video on YouTube where a trans woman was being interviewed by a local news station in Florida, of all places. As they were describing their life and everything and what they've been through and their experiences, I find myself sitting there saying, yes, that's me, you know? And so, yeah, I think that was the point. I just could not deny it anymore.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I remember myself seeing other trans women online, and it was something about seeing those trans women just authentically being themselves and forging their own sort of womanhood that made my brain go, oh, wait, I too am a woman, just in a different way. I just always sort of pushed down that sort of thought, because in my brain, I was like, well, I would have loved to be born a girl, but I don't know that I can and be one. So in my brain, I was kind of just like, okay, well, if I can't be a woman, I would settle for this identity or this identity because this makes mine. It kind of made me go, wait, I can do this and be this. So I really relate to that of like seeing another trans woman and being like, oh, that's okay. That's why I was confused this entire time.
Mm-hmm. And then when I actually made my first trip to Indie Pride, I just remember that was the first time I was really exposed to that much. And I just remember, even though I was still in denial, that was probably the first time I got to experience the happy side of it, and thinking, okay, this isn't so bad. So much of the love and acceptance that was everywhere to be seen. And I'm just like, I could do this.
So I wanted to ask you, do you feel as though apps like TikTok, where there's so much discourse and conversations that are happening, do you feel like that sort of affected you in a positive way, like as a trans woman living in this digital age?
What affected me, and of course, TikTok was my big pandemic activity. So when I was on there, and it was actually, they gave me so much more confidence. All of the youth friends that I made and the other, the LGBT people that were coming to me, and they were flattering and praising me. And I'm like, I've done nothing, So yeah, they helped me out in a very positive way.
I really relate to that. There's something about the way the app is set up because it's set up to like keep you on there as much as possible. It kind of trains itself to show you videos that you want to watch. And so my entire feed is mostly just trans women. And so this entire year, I just been seeing trans women on my For You page. And it's really done works for my confidence and my self-esteem because I'm constantly seeing trans women all over the world with all different types of styles and aesthetics and lifestyles, just authentically being themselves. And it's sort of made me feel a lot more comfortable in my womanhood. So I really relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think what with the widening reach of the internet, we are also like getting a lot of negativity on what it means to be a woman from, people like J.K. Rowling, And I think it's really important that these types of sites are coming up to like reaffirm, that a woman is not born, a woman is made. And I think it's really important that more people are being like able to like see that, because voices like J.K. Rowling are so, loud, and because she's famous. And, with other people finally being able to have a platform and like express and reaffirm other people, it's really helping a lot of people's confidence.
I should have put bookmarks in this. Goodness, I really should have bookmarked them because I am looking for, Hunter mentioned the social media era. And I remember reading a couple of these where people that you interviewed and put in this anthology, like mentioned absolutely like having that outlet and seeing other people who were like them on things like TikTok and like Instagram. That absolutely is a thing that's like, oh, that's, if these people can do it and do it safely, so can I. Like, It's absolutely watching other people's success is like watching them live the dream absolutely makes it feel better. I cannot find it for the life of me. I just am like, oh, absolutely though. Like I had a lot of internalized transphobia when I came out. I came out as trans about a year and a half ago. So pretty recently. And, I didn't start transitioning until I left high school because God knows that's a terrifying prospect of like being the different kid right as high school is about to end. I didn't have the guts for it. And I have a lot of friends who are in high school who are actively transitioning and fighting that fight. And I'm very, very proud of them. Like, that's a really scary thing. But for sure, like, we've all talked to each other about like seeing other people do it, seeing other people make it, pushing through like depression and dysphoria, seeing other people living the dream the way that they've always wanted to is like absolutely a huge inspiration. And things like this, reading through this, I was like, holy shit, like this is a thing that could have saved me 5 years ago when I was like is it really worth it to say something? Will it ever get better? And for some people it doesn't. And that's the sad truth of it, right? That not everybody, it doesn't get better for everybody. But like reading the stories of people who have made it and who are proud of who they are and who are vocal about it is a really encouraging thing. And I want to thank you so much for compiling all of that into this skinny little book for our entertainment. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was just something that I had no idea that it would grow to be as big as it got. I really didn't think I was going to get 37 people. I was first hoping for 50, and I thought, 15 might be the best I can do, but they just kept coming and coming and coming, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is wonderful.
Rolling out of the woodwork, yeah. I think there has also been a lot of conversation recently. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but like people who are like, oh, there are more trans people today than ever, and so we need all of this fucking. I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear. We need all of this like legislation to prevent trans kids from doing stuff. I wanted to ask you about, did you ever envision a day where it would be like a legislator who's trying to keep a trans kid from like playing in sports or talking about their families?
I didn't, it blows my mind that someone who the nation has put their trust in, completely abandons that trust and attacks its own people. With things like that, it makes me angry. It makes me want to cry. I just want to put myself in front of those kids and say, hey, knock it off.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a thing from like the volunteer perspective too, of like, do it to me and not to my kids, right? These kids are just trying to figure themselves out. They're trying to live their lives. They're trying to be teenagers. Mm-hmm. If you're going to take it out on anybody, take it out on those of us who have adjusted by now. Like, not these kids who are already struggling with fitting in with their peers and already feeling ostracized because middle and high school is hard for everybody. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. They don't need to be bullied by grown adults and their peers on a regular basis. I think that's, personally, I hold the belief that talking about it and talking about our experiences right now especially is incredibly important. Letting kids know that not everybody has to be a sob story. Not everybody has to be a statistic, that eventually things will probably get better. It's just that sometimes they have to get worse first.
I know that in one of the states that they were trying to pass the bill that would not allow trans girls to play sports, there were only 2 trans girls on the sports team that it would affect. Only 2.
There weren't any here, were they? Were there?
I'm not sure about it.
They looked around for, like, I remember, oh God, was it, I don't know, sports stuff. I'm going to get yelled at in the comments or whatever for not knowing about sports stuff. But there was an organization who was trying to stop this bill, like trying to have someone step forward and say, hey, I'm a trans girl in a sport. Please leave me alone. And they couldn't find one. In the whole state of Indiana, there was nobody that even fit that criteria, which just proves that it's a useless bill. You know what I mean? Like, they're preventing
it's not a useless
storm.
Bill. It's a fear tactic.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a man was talking about this. He is like in sports, and he was saying, if these people were actually interested in making it fair, they would sit back and they would think, how do we make it fair for trans women to compete? But they're not.
How do we keep trans women out? It's a totally different conversation.
They're sort of going from the conversation from a place of, you're not a woman, you're never going to be a woman, and this is why. And I thought that is exactly what it is. Like, their way of saying, you are not authentically a woman, and we're going to show you through this legislation.
It's baffling that anybody would make a bill targeting children that is not designed, to keep them safe. They have no way of representing themselves. Children, this is a whole other thing that I'm like angry about. Children have no way of representing themselves in the government. We're not old enough. They aren't old enough to vote. They aren't old enough to have their taxes, that they have to pay because they work, go into like anything that they have a say in. So I think that unless it is concerning their safety, which is what they're phrasing it as, unless it's actually concerning their safety, then you should not regulate how children play, how children act, and how children, grow up.
Absolutely. I think the whole oh God, have you seen, this might be a little bit niche because I spend a lot of time on Facebook to make fun of people. But the whole thing of it's like a photo of, I think, Aladdin and Hercules, that they're talking, the whole thing just says like, if you believe this and it's just like a heterosexual couple is wholesome, and this is a homosexual couple, and this is propaganda, then you're not really worried about kids, you're just homophobic. It feels weird to verbally describe an image I saw on the internet, and so that it feels very clunky. But it's the whole thing of, clearly you do not give a fuck about children. You don't care about kids. You care about your ego and you care about your stupid fucking values. It's not about the kids. I could talk about this for hours. I should stop. Clearly we're all very upset about it.
I wanted you to sort of explain to those that are cis why it's important for people to be affirming and respect another individual's pronouns, especially when dealing with LGBTQ youth.
I think that first and foremost, that it says that I see you for who you are. Your existence is valid. You're just basically building them up. You're helping to give those people confidence, their own confidence. For someone to come around and knock them back down by saying, no, you're not, you're this, that's just the negativity can really destroy a person. And I think LGBTQ people need all the positivity they can get.
I also think that a lot of the non-affirming things or the attacks that especially like trans people get, both trans masc and trans femmes, can sort of like play into negative stereotypes that affect even cis people. So, whether that's, making fun of trans women who maybe have to shave or have facial hair, it's like there are cis women who have to shave or who have facial hair. So you're hurting that group of people, or making fun of trans women for being muscular. There are cis women who are more muscular, who are athletic. There are cis women who are taller. There are men who are shorter. There are men who have smaller builds. When you attack trans people, you attack cis people as well, because it's not so black and white as far as how human bodies go. And so I think it's also important to be affirming, just because if we want to respect everyone, that has to begin with affirming trans people, because I think that we are the sort of answer that everyone is looking for as far as connecting everything.
That too also boils down to the TERF argument about bearing children. I see that a lot, is, how TERFs are like, oh, but real women can have babies, because TERFs, like, there are cis women who are infertile. Like, it goes all the way down to fully trans misogyny, obviously, because of the root of the word, is rooted in regular misogyny. But for sure, there's a part of it that where cis people will invalidate each other for the sole purpose of invalidating us. And that is really funny to me. That they don't care if they're right. They just care about being hateful.
Mm-hmm. And I also noticed something about that argument too. if the only thing that they find themselves like defining themselves as a woman is being able to give birth, that just reinforces the argument that that's all that women are good for.
Exactly.
The turf mindset really is just internalized misogyny turned around so they can pretend it's not about themselves. Insane.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you next why you think it is important for LGBTQ youth to come out, but also, more importantly, why is it more important to be safe while coming out?
I think at this point in time, people don't know just how strong our numbers are. There's, we've got like a certain percentage or whatever. I can't think of the numbers right now, but there is a large number of people who have already come out, and how many more are waiting that they don't know about? The public thinks, and especially the politicians think that, oh, well, there's not enough of them to make a difference. I say they're wrong. And to do it safely, to me, that's first and foremost as well. When you're coming out, make sure you've got an exit plan, just in case it doesn't go well. Make sure you've got a neighbor or an ally or a relative or someone who will support you so that you can be there and so that you can be there along the way. I know that doesn't make sense, but
No, it does. It is really important. I feel like there are gives and takes to the closet, because as the quote that I read earlier said, it does provide safety, but you're also stuck in there with something else. So it's kind of that double-sided sword.
We've talked before about
not Hunter.
We've talked before about how safety, you're all good. We've talked before about how safety is, I think, the utmost concern, but also there is some level of being out is inherently a sacrifice of safety. Like there is always like a chance. There's always some chance that something bad is going to happen. And that obviously is a terrifying thing, but coming out in and of itself, the moment you do it, that shouldn't be an immediate compromise of your safety. If a person, I think, knows that it's an unsafe environment to say something, as much as because it really is a double-edged sword. As much as I hate to say it, it is probably a better idea to stay quiet. And I hate to say that because it hurts. I know how much it hurts to be in the closet and to feel unsafe and feel like you can't say anything.
Yeah, because I definitely have this feeling of like being out, I'm in this constant state of like, I can experience trauma at any point and I probably will. And that's
absolutely. Especially in a red state where bills like HB 1041 are common. Oh my God, it's terrifying. It could happen any day. But
it really could. It's exhausting having to like wake up every morning and I wonder what my senator did today to make it so that I can't exist.
Yeah.
And you laugh, but it's true.
No, I do, because it is true. And we have to laugh about it so we don't fucking cry. Yeah, for sure. I read something a little bit ago, like, those inspirational little quotes, like being out is sacrificing your safety for your sanity. And that has to come as like an equal exchange. I hate like putting stipulations on coming out, because I know that kids are looking for any excuse they can find to not do it because it's scary, and I know that because I was one of them. But I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say something I'm gonna regret. But I think I feel like sanity and safety are equivalent needs, right? Where if you are mostly safe and you're losing your shit, you got to do the thing that's going to help you keep your shit together. Even if that lowers your safety, as long as they're balanced out, I think that makes it better.
I think
that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I dove into the trans activism stage of my life or whatever, maybe a little too early, because what I found was getting the negative side of things and trying to fight against it was actually doing more harm for my mental state than I was ready for. It brought on a lot of dysphoria, a lot of fear. It made me want to just hide away in my closet or my bedroom and pull the covers over my head and just not come out. And now, but I found that since then, every so often, I'm right back out there in the fight, and I don't want to say it's getting easier, but I'm getting a little more confident, a little more comfortable with it. There's too many people out there that can't fight for themselves because they don't know how to handle it. I always thought I was one of those people, and now I'm like, what's more important?
Yeah,
and for me, that's the greater good.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. A lot of the time, I absolutely will go out of my way to pick fights with transphobes, like on Twitter. And I always get my feelings hurt about it. They say something mean, and I'm like, oh no, that's personal, and I'm going to cry about it. But I think, part of that is I have rejection sensitivity, and I know that about myself. And so I shouldn't go picking fights with transphobes on Twitter, because I know they're going to say something that's going to make me cry. But also, if even one person listens, it's making the world a better place. And even if that means I'm going to cry in the shower tonight, that's fine, because one person got it. One person understood. Somebody felt seen. And that might be some like self-sacrificing bullshit that I've put myself on, where I'm like, oh, but other people's feelings matter more than mine. But also, I know what it feels like to watch other people talk shit about you and feel like you can't say anything, and no one else is saying anything either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd rather like give myself that momentary discomfort on behalf of someone else who might see that and go, look, there are other people like me who are fighting, than to stay safe for me. Does that make sense? And that absolutely does not go for everybody. If that doesn't work for you, don't do that. If it's going to compromise your mental health, do not go out of your way to do that. Absolutely not. It's a thing that has to be safe. If it's going to hurt you physically or mentally, don't fucking do it. I do it because I'm a self-sacrificing moron. But like, for sure, I think
we
it's about,
shouldn't have to sacrifice ourselves anymore.
Absolutely.
We need cis people to actually step up and help, because they can claim all that they want. Cis people can, that they support the trans community, that they will never do anything to hurt the trans community, that they are on our side, but they don't do anything to actually help, other than maybe post something on their Instagram story or say, hey, that's not cool online. But once I'm so tired of people doing the bare minimum, because we are tired and we need help. We've contributed so much to your culture, to your livelihoods. It's time for you to help us now too, because we cannot do this without them.
We're burning ourselves out, falling on the sword for each other, and it cannot keep going that way.
Yeah, I get so many friends that will, instead of posting it online, they'll find something positive, but they'll send it to me in private in Messenger. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, why don't you just put that out there for the world to see it? If it's that important, other people need to hear it and see it too.
People who are allies in private, my least favorite.
Even my best friend, she told me, well, why do you have to say anything if it's that much of a struggle? And I'm like, because then they win.
Yeah.
I feel like there is something to just being out as a queer person in general that does feel sacrificial in a way. Like, I have had multiple people come up to me and thank me. Like,
just for being out?
Just for being, literally just because I'm a Black trans girl and I'm out in Indiana, like, people just come up to me and they thank me.
I will say that is brave as fuck, though. We should not diminish how fucking brave that is.
But I look at myself, I'm like, I am such a boring person with such a girl life. Like,
no.
I don't know. myself, I'm like, me, like, you know, I guess when I compare myself to like the Black trans woman that came before me, I'm like, I'm okay, I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to survive. That's it.
Absolutely.
But so were they.
Yeah, that's all we're ever trying to do, you know? Like, we're just trying to make it through the day without getting called a slur today.
Like, I just want to make it to like 80. You know, I'm not asking for much.
God, 80 is so many. That's so many years to be alive. God. I'm banking on like a good 50. I don't.
I mean, honestly, if I make it to 50, I'm doing good because statistics say 35 for me. So
yeah,
if I make it to 50.
I made it past the date that I was supposed to die 2 years ago. So like at this point, all of it's progress.
I would say you're doing exceptional.
That's kind of a fucked up thing to say. I'm sorry. Again, have to laugh about it so I don't cry. But like, absolutely, there's a thing of you're alive, you're here, you're living, you're breathing, and you're doing the thing. Whether you're in the closet or out of it, you are queer, right? And you're living as a queer person. And there is something to be said for that. Not everybody has that desire to fight for stuff and to have to like trudge through life all the time. And I can't rag on people who stay in the closet, because if I had known any better, I would have done it when I was 12 too. I was just so excited about the new information that I thought no one else around me had. I was so excited to tell people I was bisexual because I thought maybe this was like a revolutionary concept to everybody else I knew. And when it wasn't, I immediately regretted saying anything. And now there's some like retrospect that for sure is, I wish I hadn't, but also I'm really glad I did. Because that opened the door for a lot more self-discovery later. Paige, I'm so curious. Do you, and I know this is like asking if you've got a favorite child, do you have a favorite story or any that like stick out to you especially?
You know, they all have some meaning, but two in particular. First one is by Erica Burns. She is, in fact, she's got her own book coming out this fall at some point, which I'm really anxious to see. But her story, it just really resonated with me because she dealt with the aspect of bullying prior to coming out. And for me, when I was young in grade school and junior high, I was bullied a lot. And so it just really, and there's so many similarities there in between what happened to her and what was going on with me, with the name calling and everything else. And it just really stuck out with me. The other one by Jennifer Saylor. She is 61. And so that hit home with me, that I'm in my upper 50s myself. I'll be 58 next month. And so for her to have come out late in life like me, that struck a lot of chords with me too. Plus she lives in Missouri, which is kind of where I grew up at. I spent a lot of my teen years there. So it's just the similarities in our lives just crossing. I was able to really easily put myself in their shoes and see me going through what they did.
I really relate to like, especially like the bullying aspect, like even before coming out as any kind of queer, I experienced bullying because I feel like I had this sort of experience of never really fitting in with masculinity. Like I felt like other boys fit into masculinity a lot perfectly than I did. And when you don't fit into the conventions of masculinity or femininity, you kind of get punished for that socially. And so I was facing queer phobia before I even knew that I was queer. I was denying queerness, like denying it. And still people saw it in me, comparing me to other people and comparing me to what the standard of masculinity was. And so I had been experiencing homophobia long before coming out. And so, yeah, the bullying aspect I really relate to. And I feel like that might even be what pushed me into coming out. Because I was just kind of like, well, you know, I'm already getting called the F slur anyway. Might as well just live off, not lie to myself. Like, at least that will make everything sort of feel better.
I feel like a lot of us experienced bullying just before we came out because everybody already knew that there was something off about us. Like, you say that the gaydar is like a theoretical thing. However, you know, it might actually be like more real than people give it credit, because there are like, we weren't normal and people and kids knew that. We could tell ourselves, so, or quote unquote normal. I wouldn't say that being gay isn't normal, because it is. It's really only recently that it's been, you know, described as not being normal.
I know, because I feel like the idea of gaydar, just like, the reason why that exists is because we have certain types of personality traits that we attribute to certain things. Like, this is femininity, this is masculinity. Men are supposed to be masculine. If they are not masculine, then that means they're queer, because they're deviating from what our idea of masculinity is. So when men deviate from that set, you know, those set masculine traits, I identify them as queer, and I'm going to punish them for that inherent queerness. So it's like that. I feel like that's what some people experience, is just naturally having, like, maybe they're naturally more feminine or naturally more masculine, and they're sort of punished for that, even though that's just kind of how their personality is, even before knowing that they're any kind of queer. And then they experience this punishment for not fitting in with either of those as perfectly.
And I suppose I worded that wrong because I was losing my train of thought. I meant to like say that since we knew that there was something different about ourselves, other people can tell that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you can smell the insecurity. It's like they know. They're like sharks in the water. It's insane.
I think that's why I get clocked now, because like I'll just be interacting with a man and they're just like, oh, why are you so nervous? And they're like, oh wait, I know now.
I for sure was bullied in middle school, but I didn't start getting bullied until after I came out. I grew up, like, my class growing up was always the same 20 kids, so we'd known each other since we were like 6. Middle school showed up and there were a bunch of new kids that I didn't know, and I mentioned this briefly. I was so excited. I had a friend of mine who came out to me and I was like, oh my God, you're allowed to like girls? That's insane. I love that. Those people, I thought that was just like something that was weird about me. And I started sharing that with everyone I met. I was like, hi, I'm River and I'm bisexual. In case you didn't know, middle schoolers don't love that. They're like, oh, okay. And I absolutely was a weird kid. I didn't get that they're like, people didn't vibe with queer individuals until well after I had already told everybody in my life, because I was so excited. Because I'm very lucky. My household has always been very accepting and very accommodating. And so I told my mom, and she was like, okay, great. Word. That means girl sleepovers can't have you can't shut the door for those either. It's like, I'm 10, but okay. I don't know. I don't know what you think is happening. I'm a 10-year-old, but all right. But like, almost as soon as I started sharing that with people outside of my bubble, I learned very quickly that people did not love hearing that information, especially from a 10-year-old kid. The whole like, oh, gay people are indoctrinating children into their weird, people for sure thought that I was being groomed into being queer, which is not how that works, by the way. If any of our listeners had any doubts, that's not how that works. And you know, kids I didn't know would have heard about. I think I was one of the only openly queer kids in middle school. Again, I wanted to tell everybody I knew, and kids I had never met would come up to me and be like, "You're the gay kid, right?" I was like, no,
Mhm.
actually, I'm bisexual and it's different. I was just so excited. And almost immediately it was, yeah, there was the negativity that comes with being different. And within a couple of months, I stopped saying anything at all. But bullying comes from a lot of things. And that, for me, it started because I came out when I was really young. But I think for sure, having that experience can make it feel, Hunter, you mentioned like if I'm going to get called this thing anyway, I might as well just confirm what they already know. And that's an experience I didn't have, but a lot of friends of mine did for sure. And being trans, like a lot of people knew before I did. A lot of people that I knew before I did. And once I came out, they were like, yeah, we knew. No one that I knew at that point was like particularly negative about it. But for sure, there was yeah, this isn't news to anybody around you. We all figured it out a couple of years ago.
That's how everyone was with me, and I feel like people had always kind of perceived that with me. They kind of just were waiting for me to be like,
for you to confirm it, essentially.
Yeah, because when I look at myself in retrospect, like I can see that woman like trying to come out, like even from like age 3 years old, like I can see that trying to come out of me and then me sort of pushing that back down. And I think I just got tired of that by the time I turned 20, and I was just like, you know what? Fine. You wanna come out? You wanna be out here? You can. Fine. Like I'm done fighting you, and I'm just letting her live now.
She gets to hang out with us. It's so great. Yeah, I for sure, when I came out to, I have this, my vocal coach is essentially like my grandmother. She's known me since I was like 4 years old. When I told her, I think I identify as a boy and I'm going to start taking testosterone and my voice is going to get deeper, which is all information I had to give her before she noticed, because she was listening to me sing every day. She goes, honey, do you remember that time when you were 11 and it was the very first time you cut your hair short? And right before school, you came in and you were so excited and you said to me in this voice, I wonder if anyone will think I'm a boy. I know. And I was like, oh, clearly I was not nearly as subtle as I thought I was. And all of my
Okay,
friends
but
at
like
school were
also,
like, yeah, we knew.
also though, like the whole I knew reaction kind of is super like
No, it sucks so bad.
devaluing.
I hate it so much because it takes
Because
a
like
lot
I
of
was
courage
like,
to come out. It's so
and
scary, even
yeah,
if
and
you
some
know
music
they
saying,
know.
oh, I know.
Yeah, I knew. Okay, so all of
Mhm.
this work and all of these nerves that I've been holding in for me were useless, and I shouldn't have wasted. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Next time I won't fucking tell you then, Janet. I don't know anyone named Janet. I just picked a name. I want that to be so clear. Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, we knew you were gay. All right, fucking fine then.
Guess won't
Never
tell you anything.
again. I know that not everybody feels that way, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I definitely, it feels icky. Ugh. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see yourself in any of these stories?
I think in some way I do in a lot of them. In particular, like I said, Jennifer Saylor, being late in life, transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of fit in a lot there because growing up, when I was younger, even into high school, into my college years, I had never even heard the word transgender. I didn't know what it was. I didn't care what it was because I didn't know it existed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was a thing. I related better with women. I just thought that was how it was. I was terrible in sports. Who isn't? Most of the kids I knew were terrible in sports. So yeah, I related a lot there. I could see myself in her story, and then the same with Erica's with the bullying, because some of the conversations and interactions that she had with her bullies were similar to what I'd gone through as well. So it was really easy to put myself in their shoes.
There was someone that said that they didn't have their epiphany when they were younger, partially because they had an attraction to women. And I know that for me, I think it was a little bit easier for me having an attraction to men and then connecting that to womanhood. Do you think that you having an attraction to women, do you think that made it harder for you to realize that you were also a woman?
I don't know about that. I mean, it may have just never really occurred to me, but I just know that I related so well. Maybe that's why I was friend zoned so much. Maybe they didn't see me as a dateable person. They just saw me as their friend, and that's all I tried to be.
The fact that you took time to put this anthology together is quite remarkable and inspiring. Have you always wanted to be a writer? And
actually, yes. From the time when I was really young, and I don't remember this, I think I saw it maybe one time. I have no idea whatever happened to it, but I wrote my first short story about some kid crawling around on the ground with one of those little cork pop guns or whatever. And mom saying, "What are you doing?" And the kid says, "I'm bug hunting." And it was just one of those little things, And I think that I just was always interested in writing. I got into 8th grade and I joined, got into journalism and joined the school newspaper staff, and right up through my senior year in high school. Got to college and took some short story writing courses. My life could certainly have benefited from a few writing conferences and camps and things like that to improve, because I look back at some of the stuff and I'm like, oh dear God, what is that?
We all hate our early art.
I even had a comment. So my old high school journalism teacher follows me on Facebook. We're friends on Facebook, and she commented. I posted something up about, it was from my memory feed from 2 years ago, talking about me being who I am. Mm-hmm. And she left a comment on it and said, and it almost made me cry. She said, as my old journalism teacher, said she could see that I really was good at communicating myself through written word, which is good because as a speaker, not so much. But as a writer, that's just, I've tried off and on to take part in so many different writing projects, but after a while, I just kind of burnt out on it. Wasn't getting anywhere. I had so many episodes of writer's block that I put it away. And then when the opportunity came to do this, my God, the words just flowed. It's true. If you're going to do it about something you love, something you know.
I feel like I personally have definitely felt that burnout and writer's fatigue with my own writing, and definitely looking at some of my old drafts and stuff. It's like, oh gosh, this is really bad. But I almost feel as though now I needed to write the bad stuff to get to the stuff that I'm actually proud of. It's like all of the bad stuff, that was practice, that was rehearsal, that was me figuring out my voice is a part of my journey. So I'm sort of appreciative now of the bad writing because it got me to where I am
now I can look back at some of that stuff and say, don't do that.
What's that thing that people say about Thomas Edison and the light bulb?
Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
The whole thing about, what's that thing people say about the light bulb and please tell me one of you knows what I'm talking about, how that it took 1,000 tries to do it right because you're learning never mind, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes
Okay, thank you God. Something about it took 1,000 tries to make the light bulb work, and you have to learn from each failure to get to the success or something like that. I might be mashing two quotes together. It's just a good. I had my 8th grade history professor, or my 8th grade professor, Jesus Christ, my 8th grade history teacher had 700 inspirational posters around her room. I might be combining a couple. I am a little bit curious, also from an artist's perspective, So you mentioned having a lot of writer's block with other stuff. Do you find it easier to tell other people's stories than like something? I just out of curiosity, like, how do I want to word this? Oh my goodness, my words aren't working today. Do you find it easier to write about other people versus yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah, to a point. I do try to immerse myself into the other characters. A short story that I did in college involved two girls living in an apartment, roommates in New York. And it just, developing those characters took a lot to it. I felt like they could have been stronger, but again, that was my early works back in my don't do that days. So I think for me to write about what I knew this time, I was able to write about the person who I was, write about what you know. And I think I didn't take the time in the past doing other stories to learn enough about my characters.
There's definitely something to be said for character development is hard. Character development sucks and it's difficult and it's a huge learning curve. And writing about real people I don't want to say doesn't require that learning curve, but it also doesn't require you to create a person from scratch, right? Like it's someone else's experience.
Although I do find it curious or interesting that my main characters in that story were two women.
Mm-hmm. You write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a tweet that I made, and this was like right before I knew that I was trans. And I was like, I want to make a movie where there's a trans girl as the lead, but I don't know if I would feel comfortable because I'm not a trans woman, so it's not mine. And I was like, that is just hilarious, isn't it?
Oh my God. I definitely had that with like writing stories about men in relationships with other men. I was like, I feel like I'm one of those cis women who's like fetishizing men who love men, and like fast forward 5 years and I am a gay man, and it just didn't click. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. There are things where you look back and you're like, oh, that was the trans thought. Right there.
Yeah.
That was a trans thought.
And it's like parts of yourself that you didn't even know were there will sometimes manifest in your writing, which is so interesting.
God, yeah.
Yeah, it's like me thinking, oh no, I can't write about that. I don't know what it is. Then my inner woman saying, hold my beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
It like takes it as a challenge for sure. Oh, is that what you thought? Here, let me prove you completely.
Is there anybody who, you really look up to or inspires you in the LGBTQ community? I know for myself, it's Elliot Page, because they've been able to create, a whole other character in this comic series, like around his own identity. And I think that's really cool myself.
So excited about that, by the way. Full tangent, very excited.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, there are two actually. Michelle Henley is the first one. If you've seen the movie Boy Meets Girl, that's her big claim to fame. She actually had a YouTube channel while she was in high school before she was Michelle. Turned out, fun fact here, what I like to tell people, is that she attended the same high school as my two sons at the same time they were there. And so to find someone, and not a lot of people come out of there and make something of their lives. And she certainly did, became a nice little, if not flavor of the month or whatever, but she had a really good run, I think. And she's still constantly working and building herself up and following her dreams. So I have a lot of
that. I do remember that movie. I watched it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was such a cute movie. And that's such a cute
movie. And then the other one is Nicole Maines, which if you've seen Supergirl, she was Dreamer on that. There's a book written about her life from the time of birth called Becoming Nicole. And it's basically about her entire life of growing up trans and the fights that she had with her parents and trying to make sense of it all. Dad wanted to just kind of shut things off and, and just check out for a while. And he didn't want to deal with it because what are the neighbors going to say? Mom decided that she was going to have to either accept and learn about this or lose my child. And she wasn't about to lose her child. So, and that's kind of where the attitude that I take
the only
on
way that you
with a lot of stuff too. It's like, you want that healthy child when they're a baby, when they're about to be born. And 15, 20 years, 10 years later, they turn out to be trans. What happened that you don't love them the same? And how could any parent turn their back on their child? I just don't get it. So the way that the life that she's had being a trans activist has just really impressed me.
Absolutely. If you're I have this thing that is deeply rooted in me because I have a lot of queer friends whose parents are accepting of like me and their other trans friends, but then not their own kids, which is the strangest thing to me. And it makes no sense. That if you are not prepared to have a kid who is disabled, who is trans, who is gay, you are not ready to have kids. Right. That's the bottom line. If you're not prepared to have a kid who has an experience that maybe you can't relate to, you are not ready to have children. It's so important to me because my friend, I probably actually shouldn't name names, but absolutely, I have a friend in high school whose mom helped me with my name change process, and was involved in a meeting with the Social Security office, and she will not call them by their preferred name or pronouns and pretends that conversation they had never happened. And I'm like, how can you do that to your kid when you've been so nice to me about it? What makes that different?
It's because it's her kid and she doesn't want her kid to turn out like that.
Yep. That's exactly what it is.
It's different when it's somebody else's kid, which I found is disgusting. I don't know why you can be more accepting to somebody else's kid and think, well, my kid has to be a certain way because they're my kid and I get to control them and they get to turn out how I want them to be.
Which really puts that pin on unconditional love, right? There is always a condition, and there shouldn't be.
It's also, I think that there's also this fear that parents don't tell their children about, where it's like they are afraid of their child like being trans or being gay or being queer because they're afraid of what their child is going to face. And so I know in my experience, I can feel people trying to talk me out of it. They're like, are you sure? Are you sure? You know what's going to happen. It's like, yes, I am quite sure. I'm quite sure. And even if I wasn't, it's like, I don't see how, like if I come to the conclusion that I wasn't sure, all I'm going to do is remember when I was trying to figure myself out, you weren't trying to help me. And I'll just always know that. So I just don't understand the tactic of, let me try to talk this person out of it because I don't want them to experience these things. It's like, maybe if you just communicated that feeling instead of trying to talk someone out of it, you could actually have an eye-opening conversation with your child instead of them not wanting to ever speak to you again. I don't know.
Absolutely.
What advice can you give to LGBTQ youth who are struggling with coming out?
I think the best advice I can give is the advice that my mother gave me growing up. And she always told me if I was concerned about making friends at school or going on a job interview or whatever, she always said, just be yourself. First and foremost, just be yourself. Don't be somebody you're not. Just be who you are. People will love you for who you are. I think my dad knew before I did. My mom, I think she would have been okay with it. My mom and dad actually both passed away long before I ever even thought that I might be trans. And I think she would have been okay with it because of that. And my dad, he tested the water way back when, but I kind of didn't really go along with the answer he thought I was going to give. So it was basically a lesson in carving a turkey. And he didn't like the way I held the knife. So he thought maybe he had a daughter instead of a son. Well, guess what, Dad? You do. I would tell people to just be yourself and don't do it unless you're ready. And there's no timetable for when you have to come out. Do it when you feel it's right. And when I came out at work to everybody, I was just sitting at my desk one day. I'd already told HR and they said, well, let me know when you're ready to change your name. And one day I just sat up and I got up and I walked to the HR office and I said, I'm ready. Just out of the blue, I just hit me. And I've never looked back.
I think the not doing it till you're ready is definitely an important point, because I think sometimes there's a lot of this, like, especially I saw it in the YouTube age of, there's this sort of, because there's so many coming out stories, you kind of feel the pressure of, oh, I should do that. And sometimes you're not necessarily in the mental space to be able to outwardly present that and be proud of that quite yet. And so I think it's a good thing. And sometimes, coming into your own as a person, just as a human being, it takes a while, especially when you sort of deviate from what we consider to be like mainstream society, whether you're not a cis person or you're not a straight person. So I know for me, it was definitely a long journey in figuring out, who this woman was. And I can remember even like going to Pride events, and I was technically like, I knew that I identified as a woman, but I had certain, hurdles that I had to jump over. So, I was saying myself, okay, I'll start wearing skirts. And I started to do that. And then it's like, okay, I can maybe wear a wig, but I'll wear it in the house. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll wear this wig when I'm hanging out with certain people, or maybe I'll wear it to certain events. And it's like, but little by little, I'm still getting there. But mentally, I wasn't in the place to try and just do all of that at once, because I needed to give myself some time, because for 20 years, I had been playing this character essentially. And so that's going to take a lot of unlearning, because for 20 years I had learned became so well adjusted to hiding that felt comfortable for me. And the not hiding, the authenticity, that felt uncomfortable. And so I definitely needed to give myself that time.
You mind if I ask a question that's not on our outline real quick? You mentioned your parents, Paige. I am curious, do you ever wish that you had been able to tell them?
Yes, definitely. There's not a day goes by that I don't think, God, why can't my mom be here for me to talk to about this? Or Dad, I know I'm sorry if I disappointed you, but I need help, and I wish I could have, I waited. Well, I mean, my dad passed while I was in my denial years. My mom passed well before I even thought about being in denial. So it would have been nice if I could have talked to them.
Absolutely. When I came out, it was very shortly after I had lost a very important figure in my life when I came out as trans. And I kind of had a second period of grief where for a minute I had to mourn the fact that she would never get to see me as me. And I just have, oh my God, am I going to cry? This is not happening right now. And I just, I haven't had anyone else to kind of talk to about that experience. And so thank you very much. That was a personal question. I'm okay. I think about her a lot, and that I think she'd be really proud. She was the kind of person who not much faced her about much of anybody. And for a long time, I had a lot of regret that I kind of was angry with myself for not figuring it out in time to tell her. Yeah. So that I was just a little curious about. Thanks, Hunter. So for our listeners who don't have this lovely book in front of them, the foreword to this anthology is from Heather Roundtree. We were wondering about her significance in your story and how she helped you in your coming out process. Would you want to talk about that?
Oh, yes. So when just before I started hormone therapy, there had been a clothing drive at the Y for gender affirming clothing. And I took part in that here in Muncie. And just afterwards, I went to Sephora when it was in the Muncie Mall, because I'd heard that they did, actually before I did that, I went out there just to learn about some skincare products. And then that was when I actually met her. For some reason, I was nervous before walking in, and I don't know why. I just felt very uneasy, and all of a sudden, and a voice in my head just told me, trust. That was it. And so I took a deep breath and I went inside. She was the one who ended up helping me out with skincare products. And I was so comfortable and at ease talking to her that I asked her about the makeovers and things like that, because I knew they had various makeup classes and a few full makeovers. There was like a purchase requirement, but I didn't care. I just wanted to learn more about makeup and taking care of my skin. And she was the one who helped me. And she asked who I wanted to do the makeover for me. And I told her, you're the only one I know, so I trust you. And I came back for that. And she did what I thought was the impossible, because for 20 years, I had been missing a lot of teeth. Thank God for dental work. And I always knew when I saw myself, a big part of my dysphoria and denial and all that was looking in the mirror and seeing my toothless grin and a scruffy masculine face. And I couldn't handle it. I always knew I would be the ugly chick. And then after that session with her, she made me beautiful. She made me cry. I can't begin to say how many hugs we shared that day. And shortly thereafter, she added me on Facebook, and she posted a video of herself in her vehicle on her way home from work, where she stopped and broke down in tears and told of the significance of our meeting that day, and how it was the first time she had ever met with a transgender person, and how much it affected her. And we have been best buds ever since. In fact, when I told her I was doing this book, she begged me if she could write the foreword. I said, I was hoping you would.
Absolutely. I reading her foreword in here, I fully started crying in the first paragraph, when she describes you as one of her lifetime people. It's a really wonderful phrase. I am absolutely going to steal it. It was one of those things that clicked to me. That bit in Friends are like, oh, he's her lobster. It was like one of those things where like that is like a really significant thing. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, she and I have been inseparable, and she's been part of so many other different enterprises, as far as even herself. She's like a nutritional coach now, I believe. And I've been there to support her for everything she's done. She's been there to support me for everything I've done. And I'll be there till the day we can't.
The listeners can't see it. I'm trying to keep myself from crying. I'm sorry. I think
that's really sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Those people are few and far between. It seems like both from her retelling of this and the way that you're speaking about it, that it was like the perfect time, right? People talk a lot about right person, wrong time, and it seemed like that was like almost fate, maybe.
Mm-hmm. we just hit each other's lives at the right moment. And, so religiously, I was raised Baptist, but not long after I left home that I kind of lost my faith, became not really atheist, but more agnostic. And I just didn't really care about religion at all. And it was odd. And that's one of the things that I say. It was until that day when I heard that voice say trust. I like to tell people that God had found a way back into my life and was bringing me to her, putting me in her path or her in mine or whatever. That's just kind of how it worked out. I mean, I'm still not heavy on religion, but I think that there's times when good advice can be found.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite verses that I like to use when I tell people when they want to give their religious arguments, it's there in the book, 1 Samuel 16:7. For man sees, now you have to look at it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So you want to tell me that God doesn't approve of who I am? I'll show you that says he does.
I think a lot of people.
I think religion is really important.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I think religion is really important on many levels, but I do think that also, nothing against Christianity, but especially the Baptist faith, because I did grow up down south, really preaches to one sort of crowd, just the sort of crowd that, has been stuck in their old ways for as long as they can remember, even though those ways may not even be seen as correct, because the Bible is an interpretation. And I think that's really something that needs to be, appreciated more, because it's not law. It is, teachings. It is advice.
Right.
It is something that really should, as all of us trans folks know, should not be dictating our lives in such a way, but at the same time, it's an important way to find ourselves.
I do think that every member of the LGBTQ plus community has at least one person that they know or have met that has tried to use religion as a battering ram. And I think that take on it is really lovely. I was soured for religion very early, kind of coming out really young, that kind of thing, with a religious family, with a Christian family, mostly Catholic. It didn't go over very well. And almost immediately I was like, okay, great. So God doesn't give a shit about me or anybody else. And recently I've been trying to kind of work myself out of that mindset that faith is something that people look for in the same way that we're looking for acceptance from one another and from everybody else. Those people are also looking for acceptance from God, and that I was being really judgmental about it because of a couple of really nasty experiences I've had. And talking to other queer people about their experiences with religion, their positive experiences with religion especially, has really helped to change my outlook. Talking about things like putting someone who cares about you very much in your path on the perfect date when it meant the most. It's that kind of thing that I think pulls us back from that cynicism of, well, if they don't give a shit about me, then I shouldn't give a shit about them either. And so that's, I think, really lovely.
So if we have nothing else to say on that subject, I wanted to ask you why it was so important for you to include the dates for the LGBTQ community at the end of the anthology.
First, I didn't realize there were so many of them. And there's a lot more than what I put in there too. And I thought, these need to be acknowledged. And, I realize that some of the actual dates may change from year to year, but I think for the most part, a lot of those do remain the same. So that's why I did it. I just felt like they needed to be acknowledged.
Yeah, when I was looking through them, I was surprised at how many things had happened as well. Even like in our own community, we don't know the extent of the stories because, most things are passed down from word of mouth. So I think seeing all of them, those dates kind of together is really, really impactful and powerful. All right. So I was wondering if you could provide us with your social media and your information so you can find a little bit more about you and what you're working on next.
Sure. I am on Instagram. I actually just changed over my Instagram to a new account because of hackers. So my Instagram is personal page or personal page 64, one of the two. I think it's 64. On TikTok, personal page. In fact, that's kind of see a running theme there. And then Facebook is actually, I probably have about a couple thousand people on Facebook that I'm with. So it's like easier to just keep my old email address on there rather than switch to the new one. But Facebook, I'm on at scottseviltwin@gmail.com. Let's see. Yeah, Twitter, I am, again, with the same email address, scottseviltwin@gmail.com. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Paige, for joining us today and having this chat with us. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Any like projects that are coming up or anything you want to shout out in particular?
I have kind of taken a step back at this point in time, although there is another one that I've been thinking about going through, is I want to do another version of this book, but I want to write it and get the experiences from the parents or the siblings' point of view, how they reacted, how they dealt with this family member coming out, how they handled it. One of those such stories, in fact, is in this book from April Hamblin. And she submitted a story about her trans son and how she dealt with that whole situation and everything, and what she learned from it as well. So I kind of want to do a book from that point of view. If and when I get started in the near future, that would be nice. I'm really hoping to be on that by this summer, but we'll see.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
We would like to take this time to thank our listeners for tuning in. It means a lot to us all. If you want to listen to our other episodes, we're available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, and Apple Podcasts. If you need someone to talk to or some resources to assist you, look up the Trevor Project or Muncie Outreach. The suicide hotline is 800-273-8255. For our trans listeners, feel free to call Trans Lifeline at 877-565-8860. We all care about you, so please take the time to care for yourself. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye!